Hello, David Pearce.
Hi. Can I start with a very personal question? How should I pronounce your name?
You can call me OP, my initials.
OP. Okay.
And I guess you're called Dave.
I can be Dave or David. I'm relaxed.
Yeah, great, great. Well, first off, thank you very much for giving these great answers. Didn't have much time to read it through, but I browsed it and it looks great. I love the personal perspectives on it.
Oh, yes. It's selectively personal. I won't claim it's a complete laying bare my soul. Also,
No, but
any potted history of one's life is inevitably rather selective and gives a rather false narrative structure and leaves out all the false starts and goodness knows what else. But accurate as far as it goes.
yeah, great. So I'll just edit it, sort of, and make some titles and sort of format it so it's easier to read. And then I'll probably just send it back to you for your final. I won't change, of course, your citations, but I'll like sort of organize it,
Whatever's
uh,
most convenient, yes.
and I'll send it back to you for your final approval. Yeah. So as I told you, this is just informal and interesting to talk to. Even though I'm actually recording it in Zoom, so that will be interesting
Best to
to see
tell
the
me it's
result.
not. Best to tell me it's not working. I'll trust your discretion to edit out anything unsuitable. But
Of course. Have you been a part of any podcasts?
yeah, it's. I mean, I'm more comfortable as a writer because then you can precisely consider what you're going to say. Whereas with a podcast, rather than stroke one's chin and think carefully, there's a tendency just to plunge in. But of course, yeah, an interview or something is more interactive. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm not a big fan of podcasts myself, but sometimes I find really interesting podcasts that are like so specialized and so small niches of different topics, which makes podcasts great. But I don't have any experience with it, so this is like really the first time I record a conversation.
Well, some people, if they're going jogging and so on, it's probably a good format. Also, not everyone loves reading. Everyone has their preferred format. And so, yeah, it makes sense to have a diversity. Ideally, I would do my stuff to animation, cartoons, and goodness knows what else.
Yeah.
Or TikTok.
Yeah, maybe I'll edit or cut something from this conversation and use it
Obviously, really is, yeah,
into
it's.
the text. I'll see what I'll do. Yeah, but yeah. So how are you enjoying your lockdown?
Oh, good. Well, I didn't realize the extent to which my life actually depends on travel. It's not when I travel as though I'm endlessly doing exotic things. Frequently, it's a case of, I'll visit a coffee shop in Oslo rather than a coffee shop in the UK. But yeah, it's the longest time I've spent in Brighton for goodness knows how long. And yeah, it's uh, so not brilliantly, shall we say. Um,
No, same here. We're actually locking down even more as we speak. There's this press conference. The more well the virus you've had for several months is now finally making yeah, spreading here in Norway. So most numbers are going up, and then the news about the vaccine that causes blood clotting, and it's not really very happy times. So in that regard, your specialty is especially relevant. Like,
well, yes, in spite of my pessimism, I mean, the number of people statistically who you would expect to have blood clots in the average week has got to be taken into account too.
Yeah,
So it's
yeah,
by no means clear
of
that the
course. I know,
AstraZeneca,
I
yeah.
know.
So it's, but yeah, it's obviously frustrating, and it will increase vaccine hesitancy.
Yeah, unfortunately. Yeah. Yeah, but yeah, of course, you're sort of a legend in the transhumanist narrative and history. And I remember very well your website in 1995, your head web, and all those articles about all different drugs and how they work. And I totally remember that very well from 95, actually. So it's a few years ago now.
Yes,
So,
because nothing dates like style, and though I have updated the content of HeadWeb, the style, it remains of its time. So
yeah, but are we about the same age? I'm 48, turning 49.
I don't think I ever tell anyone my age, but
I think we're about the same age.
well, yes, I would have to have been pretty young when I wrote the hedonistic imperative.
Yeah,
Yeah.
but I remember much of the same influences, like of course Drexler, and you are probably much more into the yeah thinkers and than I am. But so I'm grateful for all the cool links. I have to read through the links you sent.
The links are optional. It's only anyone who wants to dig deeper, because inevitably in a short interview one can only skim the surface. But yeah, if I say something that's particularly provocative or controversial, or use a piece of jargon, I like at least back it up with a link or two.
Yeah, that makes it better. So, but you like you talk about it in your text, but your answers. But so did you meet like Nick Bostrom, which is probably the most well-known person today? Do you like still work together with him, or?
Yeah, he's gone a very different route. I mean, there is a fundamental gulf clearly between someone who is a fanatical life lover, worried about issues of existential risk, and someone who thinks life on Earth is absolutely monstrous.
So
And Nick and I, we both believe in future of super intelligence, super longevity, and super happiness. But yeah, very different priorities and preoccupations. I mean, I
yeah.
never did convert Nick to vegetarianism, but yeah, of course, he's in terms of making transhumanism in the broadest sense an academic discipline. Yeah, he's done a spectacular job, and yeah, with super intelligence was the book Eddie Zukowski should have written, really, because it sets out the kind of the IJ good intelligence explosion scenario very nicely. My last serious discussion with Nick actually was over, yeah, kind of superintelligence and the binding problem. The binding problem, yeah, why aren't we at most just micro experiential zombies? Can classical digital computers ever wake up, so to speak, and become unitary subjects? And some very smart people do and don't regard the binding problem as fundamental.
Can you please describe the binding problem shortly?
Yeah, okay. If orthodox neuroscience is correct, and you are essentially a bunch of 86 billion membrane-bound neurons, then how is it possible right now you are experiencing unified perceptual objects and a unitary self? You are this so-called unity of perception and the unity of self. That's global binding. That even if consciousness is fundamental to the world, as some people take seriously and I take very seriously, if physicalism is true and there is no kind of strong emergence, then at most we ought to be micro experiential zombies. After all, look at the the so-called brain in the gut, the enteric nervous system. Your, you know, 500 million neurons, fabulously complicated information processing system in one sense, and yet we don't think your brain in the gut is a unified subject. Whereas for reasons science doesn't know, though I'm very interested in this topic, somehow, at least when you're awake rather than in a dreamless sleep, like right now, you are a unified subject of experience. And this isn't just some kind of implementation detail, it is tremendously computationally powerful. I mean, if we look at syndromes where phenomenal binding partially breaks down, someone with simultanagnosia can only see one object at once. Someone with motion blindness can't actually see motion. They'll simply see a lion or a bus over there, a bit nearer, then suddenly right in front of his body image. Or someone, and this is a real case, someone with visual agnosia who can't, let's say, see a paintbrush, but can only see bristles and a handle. Phenomenal binding is tremendously computationally powerful. It's got tremendous fitness benefits, and yet no one knows how it is possible within the kind of standard neuroscience picture. And in the case of classical digital computers, programmable digital computers, I think a lot of people assume that, yeah, but supposedly anything that brains can do, a classical programmable digital computer can do, as the Church-Turing thesis is essentially, given that apparently our brains can be modeled on a digital computer, people assume that, well, and given that we are conscious, somehow digital computers will one day wake up too. But I'm extremely skeptical here. I don't think a classical digital computer can ever become a subject of experience, even if you were to replace the ones and zeros of a classical Turing machine with discrete, this is rather fanciful, pixels of experience, and then execute the program. All you would have is a micro-experiential zombie. You wouldn't get a unified subject of experience. And so, yeah, programmable digital computers are wonderful tools and they can outperform us in many ways, but they aren't subjects of experience. And whereas you and I can talk about the nature of consciousness and binding and exploring psychedelia and all kinds of issues like that, a digital zombie has no notion of what it lacks.
Exactly. It's it's sort of reminds me of like timeless or philosophical questions about our ability to comprehend reality and like Kantian sort of thoughts back to the Enlightenment era.
Well, indeed, Kant anticipated the binding problem. I mean, if you say something like the transcendental unity of apperception or something like that, you'll get some funny looks from computer scientists. But nonetheless, yeah, I mean that's Kant really talking about the unity of the self or global binding. Yeah.
Yeah, because like transhumanism, sort of, well, it's partly philosophical and also, of course, like sort of technological. It's like the consequences of technology in the realm of philosophy, really, sort of.
Yes, I mean, it is. Transhumanism is such a broad movement that any kind of definition one gives has this element of the stipulative, and you can get 20 different, self-avowed transhumanists. Ask them to define transhumanism, you'll get 20 odd definitions. Certainly, almost all, well, I'd say essentially all transhumanists believe in defeating aging. Though what that entails is rather various. Some transhumanists believe that we can transfer ourselves to another substrate. Others are focused on the biological. Others, fearing they're not going to make it, are focused on cryonics. But yeah, I think one can fairly say, yeah, that all almost all transhumanists want to defeat the biology of aging. Super intelligence, this kind of catch-all, it embraces some very, very different traditions from the I.J. Good, Miri intelligence explosion scenario that Nick takes most seriously, to the kind of Kurzweilian fusion of humans and machines, to, and this is the scenario I take most seriously, the idea that essentially we're going to rewrite our own genetic source code and become super intelligence ourselves, massively augmented by AI. But essentially anything a classical digital computer can do, you'll be able to incorporate in a neurochip. So all of the blessings or the curses of consciousness and the pleasure-pain axis, together with all the computational power of a classical digital computer.
Yeah, yeah. You were onto the topic of like different organizations, and of course, Bostrom's the Oxford Future of Humanity Institute is probably the most like established when it comes to like financing and proper titles, etc. What's your thoughts on the Lifeboat Foundation? I saw that you were like a member of the Futurist board or something.
I don't do any advising there. I think they essentially, the Lifeboat Association, reached out to all manner of people, and so long as it actually doesn't involve any work, most people are happy. Don't quote me on this, but most people are probably quite happy to serve in some nominal capacity. I've let them use some of my work, but clearly their conception of the of our predicaments and the nature of Darwinian life on Earth is probably rather different from mine.
Yeah, I was also invited to become a member. It's very American in so many ways, but if you know what I mean. But yeah, I think it's fascinating to have a foundation dedicated to that sort of projects, and they're actually collecting money. So I'm waiting for their what's the most advanced thing there, like the AI shield, or like the like different protective projects, which sounds rather sketchy, but it's cool anyways.
So and as you know, I mean, really, in spite of my interest in many other topics and the different, the other strands of transhumanism, the problem of suffering has always loomed largest in humans and non-humans. Everything else to me really is just kind of icing on the cake if we can get rid of the horrors of suffering.
Yeah, I get it. Yeah, there's an ongoing drug debate in Norway, and it's become rather mature, even for Norway. So there's several. I can send you the Norwegian text, and you can just Google translate it. But it talks about research into psychedelia in Norway in the early 60s, and for treating like depression and other probably post like trauma sort of treatment. And 2,500 patients in Norway were treated with, I think it was LSD, and they had great results. But then the hippie movement came and sort of destroyed it. So this article is about that history, which you of course know very well. But one of the researchers today that is also interested in how well different drugs and especially psychedelics can be used for treatment. And they talk about how hard it is to get research funding for projects that are looking to make people better than well. I think that is one of your your quotes or
Well,
terms.
it's not the expression "better than well." It's not original to me, of course, but nonetheless, yeah, the idea is to make people better than well. It's not morally urgent in the same way as treating people with severe depression, but nonetheless, so-called psychologically healthy people today are in many cases quite distressed a lot of the time. So yeah, essentially we want to get it hardwired so that being better than well is as natural as breathing. I mean, I'm more cautious about the therapeutic potential of psychedelics than many people. I think they are, I mean, intellectually fascinating, profoundly important. We can go on to, we can talk about that in a minute. But in terms of their potential in the treatment of something like depression, I'm still skeptical. There can be wonderful results, but they are unpredictable. And yeah, a good therapy needs, you need to be able to advise people in advance and allow them to make informed decisions. And some of the people with the very darkest minds are the people most likely to have a bad trip on psychedelics. So though I envisage the future of billions of years of exploration of altered state spaces of consciousness, I think this can best be done after we have upgraded our reward circuitry and got rid of suffering. Which no, I mean, if you or if you know someone who's had some life-defining spiritual epiphany on a psychedelic, this can seem a very dull, boring, responsible, conservative answer. But the problem is that, yeah, you just cannot make an informed choice in advance. You don't know what is going to happen if you take a major psychedelic.
Exactly.
I mean, this was one of my sort of reservations about traditional philosophy and much of science, that it is just not informed by the empirical method. Yeah.
Yeah, but also the problem with getting research funding for this sort of research compared to like research on how to treat diseases. It's if you but I don't know, you probably don't apply for research funds, or do you?
No, essentially, if one is a writer and one's, shall we say, of relatively austere habits, it doesn't take funding in the same way as if you were wanting to conduct clinical trials or something like that. I mean,
uh,
yeah, I mean, I sometimes think, I would like to be able to have a proper research institute, team of researchers and so on, but no, I don't apply for funding. I
no,
mean,
but
yeah, sometimes I will think, wouldn't it be wonderful just to have, serious funding and so on? But of course, it brings problems of its own too. So
yeah, but I guess you probably know about other sort of research institutions that in one way or another rely on some sort of funding,
yeah.
or I don't know, the what's well, this article mentioned a few of those institutions at universities. Let me see, but also the one that I know is the MAPS
Yeah.
organization.
Mhm.
I don't know how they are financed, but they seem very professional in
They
their
are, yes.
approach.
Mm.
So, but there's probably many other sort of institutions and organizations that sort of work with these sort of on the more research side of things. Um, yeah. Yeah, this is also a bit interesting since I'm talking with you, and it's been nice to do an interview with you. Who would you recommend that I do another interview with?
Ooh, good heavens. Interesting people. Perhaps Andres Gomez Emelson of Qualia Research Institute. Um, or from the perspective of suffering focused ethics, Magnus Vinding from Denmark. Um,
Okay, cool.
yeah, I mean, just a couple of names, but of course, a lot depends on what you
Yeah,
want
yeah,
the focus of
yeah.
plausible
Of course,
futures to be.
exactly. And that is still an open question. So
Yeah.
this Substack project is still in the making.
Also, launching plausible futures with someone who's claiming our future probably lies in gradients of superhuman bliss, people might say it's a bit of a misnomer.
No, it's great. It's great. Yeah, this is the article. Well, I can send it to you. And he mentions a few other areas. I can send it to you so you can check it out if you want to. Yeah, no, you're totally within the scope of my little experiment. So I'm still a bit anxious about actually starting to charge money for like this Substack subscription sort of thing. So I'll probably end up with publishing this interview for free as well. So it's like this real fine balance between, first you have to make lots of really good content, and then you have to like try to figure out when you can like, okay, please subscribe. so but how do you make money, if I can be that blunt?
I tell people my role model is Diogenes and his tub.
You don't need much money.
Well, I don't have many vices, shall we say.
Yeah, but do you live in London?
No, I live in Guildford in the on the south coast. I have what estate agents would describe as an oblique sea view.
Oh, great.
Um, it's yeah, given yes, I've lived here for goodness knows how long. Um,
So
yeah, I
it's,
mean Brighton is
yeah,
it's a
yeah,
kind
of
of
course,
bohemian
Brighton,
town.
of course,
Yeah.
yeah, the
It,
famous
it
yeah,
has
yeah.
a pavilion built by yes, the son of Mad King George, who lost us the colonies, and it has a pier and a beach. But given a lot of the time I lead quite a virtual existence, I won't claim I'm immersed in the local community.
Okay, yeah, it's like a summer destination, holiday destination for many Brits, isn't it? Yeah.
It had a reputation for where people used to go when they wanted a dirty weekend in less liberated times. But
Yeah.
given things are a little more relaxed now, this reputation has faded.
Okay. Yeah. Well, I just a question here. I come from like a country estate with a forest where we've been hunting elk for ages. Hunting wildlife, and we do it very according to strict guidelines for not taking too many elks, and it's done very humanely, and it's really strict. But you still mean that it's wrong to hunt for wildlife?
Yes, essentially.
But are they supposed to just reproduce and die by sickness?
No
That
one
that would be the
needs
consequence.
cross species fertility regulation. Essentially,
Okay, so
we should be thinking of ways systematically to help sentient beings rather than harm them.
yeah, I
And
of
yeah,
course agree, but
essentially, non-human animals are as sentient and sapient as toddlers. And yeah, one wouldn't say that toddlers should be hunted humanely or anything. Essentially, they should be protected and loved. And so, yeah, I think we need an
so
anti-speciesist revolution.
so
Yeah.
so your short answer is that we should give birth control pills to the wildlife?
Yes, it's quite. In the case of large terrestrial vertebrates, one would use immunocontraception. This has been done in populations of deer as an alternative to so-called culling. In the case of the rest of the living world, intuitively, marine ecosystems, small rodents, rabbits, and so forth are not accessible to immunocontraception, but essentially, yeah, the whole biosphere is programmable if one uses tunable gene drives and stuff. Yeah, this is not the first step of the abolitionist project, but if we're serious about getting rid of suffering, one has to consider, yeah, the different options, and yeah, some kind of pan-species welfare state. I mean,
yeah, great. I love talking to you. I was I'll probably just put a link to your book on Amazon so people can buy your book on Amazon. And if you have any other sort of things that you would like people to
essentially, my friend Magnus Finding edited some of my online essays. So thanks to Magnus for doing that. But yeah, I do actually intend to write a paperback, essentially, the biohappiness revolution, setting out the kind of overview of the abolitionist project, paradise engineering, because some people do like, a physical paperback book in their hands.
And also update your sort of the scientific status and other.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, the hedonistic imperative was written in 1995, and though over the years I've done a fair number of different essays, the most substantial recent one was only a few years ago on the potential of synthetic gene drives that I touched on just a minute ago. But yeah, clearly the science has moved on since 1995, and yeah, though people are welcome to wade through the websites, and nonetheless, yeah, just an overview of the core project. And I call it the abolitionist project. The original abolitionist was Gautama Buddha, but it's really Buddhism updated for an era of biotech and IT.
Yeah, great. Great talking to you. I think I've covered lots of things here. You are so much more smarter than me, so some of these things are a bit above my head, but it's really interesting, and I'll probably learn a lot from going through your text now and sort of making it more accessible both to me and my readers. So I'm looking forward to that. And then I'll send you an email with my more article documents.
That'd be awesome.
Great. Well, great talking to you.
It's been great chatting, and yeah, chat to you again soon, I hope. Fate willing.
Hopefully. Thank you. And eternal bliss.
Eternal bliss.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.